Soon as spring rolls around, I start to think of the first thing I like to make every year, and that is rhubarb galettes. Even before my rhubarb is ready to harvest in the garden, I go and find some in the grocery store and make these sweet little galettes. They're so fun, and the bright flavor of rhubarb is just one that always makes me think of the early days of spring when the leaves are just starting to come out. There's a couple components we gotta make and chill down for this one. The first one being our rhubarb compote. So go ahead and take your rhubarb and roughly chop it. It doesn't really matter because we're gonna cook this down and then blend it. I'm a big fan of rhubarb compotes over whole rhubarb. I don't think they bring that much to the table. Even when you poach it with something sweet, I think a compote just lends itself far much more to the flavor of rhubarb coming through consistently on the tongue. Additionally, hibiscus in this is just going to make this tropical flavor addition, which is so nice. Into the pot, we're going to add our brown sugar, hibiscus, rhubarb, put it on a medium-high heat, and we're going to bring it to a boil. Add a little liquid to this if you see anything starting to sear. Otherwise, just keep rolling until it's nice and soft, maybe 15-20 minutes. The hibiscus is also going to add a nice deeper red color than you could normally get from rhubarb. Even if you're using a newer variety, a lot of the older ones are a greenish red, doesn't really work out as well. Put it into a jar, set it aside to chill. For the first layer of our galettes, we're going to do a pastry cream. This also needs to cool down at least to room temperature before you use it. Separating 4 egg yolks out from the egg whites, reserving them for something else. Maybe like a ice cream cone. With warmer spring weather, I gotta find my ice cream maker. I think it's in the basement? Maybe. I'm not 100% on that. I got lots of things like that. Can't find them when I need them. I mean, eventually I find them. You know, eventually. Next, add some cane sugar to your egg yolks and some salt. Dude, all custards, add some salt, seriously. And some vanilla extract, always a lovely base note. And corn flour to make your life a little easier. All custards can be made without it. Just a bit trickier. When with pastry creams, you really want these to set up, so don't mess around. Get your little whisk out and go to town and bring this together into a nice homogeneous mixture. Before we start heating up our milk component, let's measure up our butter. A little bit of mise en place here, you know, get things ready ahead of time, have everything on hand. It's like a toolbox. You're assembling all your tools, ready to roll when you need them, not, you know, freaking out while things are boiling over and whatnot. I mean, we've all been there, but it's nice not to when you can. Put those in a little bowl, nice and organized. Kind of regretted not doing it into the bowl initially, but I cleaned off my scale, and here we go, adding some whole milk to our small saucepan. This is going to be brought over a medium-high heat. Bring it to a simmer. By doing this in 2 separate stages, you help reduce the chance of curdling. You can totally make a pastry cream and all in one, but it's far riskier. By heating this up and slowly adding half of it to your egg mixture, you're tempering the eggs, bringing them up to temperature without messing around too much. Then add the remaining bit back to the warm milk that's already in your pan, whisk it up, and start the process on medium-low of bringing this into the thickened pastry cream stage. Once it starts bubbling like lava, start killing the heat, keep whisking, and begin to add your butter one at a time, just getting each one incorporated before adding the next one. This is also going to slowly cool down the pastry cream depending on your butter temperature. Normally you want it at room temperature, but cold butter is not the end of the world too, as long as you do it slowly. Once it's in there, go ahead and cover it with plastic wrap, pushing it down to make sure a skin doesn't form. Normally I wouldn't use plastic wrap in most things I do, but this is the one occasion where I think it's probably worthwhile. Once your pastry cream's all set up and covered, go ahead and set it aside and let it come to room temperature. Work on your pastry next. Food processor enters stage left and right, our old friend. Woo, that made a mess. Sometimes flowers are embedded in the tops of bags when you open it. All right, we're gonna do some Masa, Harina, all-purpose flour. This is a rustic tart. The Masa flavor comes through really well with cornmeal. Also an awesome addition. This is a medium fine, just a little bit of grit, nothing crazy. Just something to add some crunch in the background. Cane sugar to sweeten it up, and salt to make it come to life. Little pet peeve of mine is when a recipe calls for chopping or mincing something and then adding it to a food processor. It's a food processor. It chops and minces stuff on its own. Why the hell would I chop and mince it before I put it in? I mean, so whole stick of butter, straight in. Yep, it's gonna do its work. Pastry can always be made by hand as well, but I like Mr. Food Processor for its ease of use and quick times. Sacrificing a little bit of cleanup, worthwhile I think. 1 egg goes into this, as well as some cream. This is gonna make a nice, rich pastry. Use Mr. Hand Spatula to get the rest out, and some cream for the chef. Thank you. Pulse a little bit just to get it started. I don't want to do a full mix in here. I'd rather start it, get to know each other, put it in a bowl, and finish it by hand. It's a much nicer way to create a short pastry. Food processor always risks overworking something like this. Just put it in a bowl and start crunching it together. Try not to knead it too much, you know, a little bit at the end while cleaning out the bowl and whatever you find thrown out on the counter as well. A drier pastry tends to make the best pastry, but catch-22, also the hardest to do anything with, so you gotta find a fine balance between that. Once upon a time, I made tarts at a farm in Vermont, and we made a pastry that was so challenging that it basically trashed my wrists every week. So at the weekend, recovering, and now I enjoy soft pastry. Wrap this guy up, we're just gonna leave it at room temperature. We don't want the butter to come together. Relax for 30 minutes or so and weigh it up on a scale so we get some clean portion sizes. One of life's little pleasures when you're measuring up things like this on a scale is when you cut something to the exact gram weight. It'll make you feel like a ninja, magician, / I don't know, something. It's cool. Forming them into little rough balls. This is not something we're trying to get exact, it's just making it into rough circles. Once they're in balls, go ahead and press them down with the heel of your hand to get them started before working each one individually on a lightly floured surface, pushing away to create a relatively circular form. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna not make these perfect. I can't stress that enough. Rustic, not perfect. In fact, bringing up the crimped edges with flour on it will make a really pretty I just wanted to say rustic again. Patina? Not quite the right word. You know what I mean. Crimp these up until you've got them all nice and ready to have fillings added to them. Just a little raised edge to hold in the pastry cream and compote. Take your set up pastry cream and give it a whisk till it looks relatively smooth. Put it into a piping bag, or you can dollop it by hand. It's a little more pleasurable to do it this way. I'm not in love with the pastry bag by any means, but sometimes it's a nice way to make a solid layer that's not too wonky, especially when spreading on a thin compote. This can be kind of tricky to do by hand without pushing into the pastry cream, so I'm just lightly adding those pretty little swirls as I go. You know, some patissiers are so in love with pastry bags that I see them put like literally everything in it that they possibly can. That just drives me crazy. You know, you have to clean them. I don't want to use disposable ones. On and on and on. We're gonna put these into a 400-degree preheated oven on the lower rack for about 20-30 minutes until they are golden brown and just starting to get a little too dark with the cornmeal addition. Keeping it real. Just add a little bit of powdered sugar to add some class to these. Grab something you got around that could be used as a stencil and wing it on. Using masa and cornmeal in the crust on these adds a real awesome rustic touch. Having a pastry cream base in the galette with the rhubarb hibiscus on top, I mean, it's like this crazy rich layer and then this sour tropical note from hibiscus on top.